Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier and this is the Piracy Show. Now on today's show we're going to be talking a bit about the Cutlass again. We're going to be going into detail about the Cutlass rework, some of the images that were dropped, was it at the end of 2015, November 13th, 2015. Some of the, the preliminary work that had been done on the Cutlass rework. So you guys can see that. Now, of course, this was all, I believe, produced in the UK prior to the ship being transferred over here to the US. So this will give you an idea of maybe kind of what to expect. But I think that moving forward, of course, given what you're about to see, also kind of keep the new Herald in mind and the new Caterpillar in mind, because ideas evolve over time. And I think those are probably going to be a lot more representative of the final Cutlass, but it's still, some of these images kind of gives you an idea of some of the things that they might be thinking of doing, or some of the things that you might be able to expect with your ship. After that, we're going to talk a bit about Cutlass versus Freelancer. With the Freelancer base only being $10 more, what's the point of owning a Cutlass? We're going to kind of bounce that around. And yeah, that should be the show. So anyways, let's get started with the Cutlass rework. Now, first off, we start here in the cargo bay. Now, immediately conspicuously missing is the docking port in the center of the floor that you would normally, jump through to board another ship, be it to rescue it, salvage it, or board it. That appears to be missing. And also the hatchway for the turret also appears to have been altered in some way. Keep both those things in mind, because when we get into the later images, you're going to see some differences and some question marks. But once again, this is just ideas that they're thinking of, so just stuff to bear in mind for a little bit later. But you'll notice that the cargo bay has been almost entirely refactored in the interior to look like it's going to better fit cargo, basically. Probably better for modularity, including modules for the medical beds and whatnot. Now, as to whether or not that's going to be something that is hull specific, if that's going to remain hull specific, or if it is hull specific, I'm not exactly sure. But I would kind of guess that by the appearance of the Cutlass Red and the Cutlass Blue, that I'm kind of leaning towards the modules for the little prison cells inside and the little hospital beds. I'm leaning towards that those would be hull specific and not just something that you can buy and just throw into any Cutlass. Now here we see the rear hatchway, and the thing to note here is that there's the docking port now rising up through the top of the ship. Now that's something that, when you see it, then you got to figure, okay, so I guess that docking port now telescopes outwards, because remember, it's got to clear the top turret on the ship now. So there's got to be some kind of telescoping mount for that hatchway. As to whether or not, that is an ideal design, we would really have to test it to see. But I mean, it is such a difference that, I don't know exactly that I'm a fan of it, because when I was looking at the old Cutlass with the hatchway in the floor, when I look at it, I kind of figure, well, then more or less you can have 4 guys ready to drop down through that hatchway, as it would be for them. You would still be within your own ship's gravity field, so you'd be dropping down and then popping up on the other side into someone else's ship. However they were aligned to you, whether you were basically aligned the same way, or if you were belly to their belly, I don't know. But that's kind of how I figured it that way. This way it looks like it would be a more constricted way to board a ship, and with that ladder coming down that way, it kind of looks like it would kind of get in your way when you would be trying to go up that hatchway. But once again, this is all preliminary work from almost over a year ago, so it's not to say that these are final designs. These are just it looks like ideas that were being bounced around at the time. Now, moving on to the forward neck of the ship. Now, this is ahead of the cargo cabin just before you get to the cockpit. Now, this is off to the left-hand side. So if you're facing forward, this would be off to your left. And now we see that there's new gun racks here. There's some equipment. There's that kind of interior insulation, some exposed wiring, which is really like kind of a hallmark of the new Herald design that we've seen, and some of the images of the interior of the Caterpillar that we've seen. And so it really looks good and, really nicely detailed. This is a really nice touch. I really like that. There's a bit of cargo netting there. It makes it look a little bit more ad hoc, but still something that was professionally, manufactured, just not to the finish and all the finery that some of the more expensive ships would have. So overall, that looks really, really cool. Now, once again, in that forward section, but facing off to the right, you see once again more gun storage, more exposed ship system, exposed wiring. The insulation appears to be missing in this image. But overall, once again, a very industrial, a very utilitarian, very Spartan look to it. Looking really great, but, with gun racks here and gun racks over to the other side, it kind of reinforces the point that this is something that is probably more used for delivering troops into battle. Like, this is a cheap battle transport, something to get troops in, but something that's not going to cost you a lot of money to operate, like say like a Redeemer would, or possibly a Vanguard dropship would. Now, moving to the cockpit, things get a little bit interesting. Of course, revised panels and all that looks cool. I can't see our little ceiling fan, so hopefully that won't get touched. But there's some interesting details here, and I'm not sure if it immediately jumps out at you the way it jumped out at me, but it's something that I just couldn't help but notice. But look at these seats. Don't they kind of look like they're mounted on rails? Rails that are kind of aiming upwards and back a little bit. And what's that at the front of the seat? I would almost think that that's an ejection seat handle. Ejection seats on a Drake ship? No, that can't be. Drake ships are too cheap to have ejection seats. So clearly this has got to be like, just an asset that was pulled from another place, because that's the way Drake ships work, right? They don't have ejection seats. Sort of like how when you go out buying and you buy a car, some cars come with seatbelts, some cars don't, right? Just like that. But overall, jokes aside, having seen the Herald, the interiors of the Herald that Josh Coons has done, having seen the entire ship that he's done, and the fact that this is his next project is the Cutlass rework. And, once again, this is all preliminary stuff. This is stuff from like last November when they showed us, and it's probably older than that. So it looks good. Some of it looks kind of odd and a little bit misplaced, but overall, having seen the Herald, I have a lot of faith that the Cutlass is in the right hands. Now, where does that leave the Buccaneer? Well, that's a question for another time. Now, as for the question of Cutlass versus the Freelancer, the $10 question. A Cutlass, $100 ship. Freelancer, $110 ship. Now, obviously, the Freelancer carries a ton more cargo. I think it's safe to assume that the Freelancer is going to have way more range than the Cutlass is. So why buy a Cutlass when for just $10 more you can get a Freelancer? And I think the answer to the question is up to the individual. Like, there's no, one size fits all answer to that question. to me, when I look at these ships, and this is like, once again, this is my opinion. When I look at these ships, you're making a choice at this point. If you're buying a freelancer, then you're more or less saying, I want to run cargo. I want to run a lot of cargo. I want to go out and do long distance cargo runs. I want to make a lot of money moving freight. That is my main aim in the game. Now, of course, the freelancer certainly has a very competent combat capability for defending that cargo. And I've talked at length about that before when I was talking about the Vanguard. And I was saying, how can a $110 ship outgun a $250 ship? Which it does. But once again, that's another show altogether. But with the freelancer, you're out there, you're running cargo, and you're kind of doing long-distance cargo missions, whereas I feel that the Cutlass is the original cheap entry into the drop ship. It can carry cargo, but I think that cargo is more or less going to be salvage that's picked up here and there, or loot that is pilfered. It can be used as search and rescue, or it can be used for prisoner transport if you get the right variant. I'm not exactly sure that you can swap all those modules around, so I don't want to say that without knowing that. But I feel that when you get to these two ships, you're kind of picking a path. You're kind of saying, I want to do one or I want to do the other. Now, there's no question that you could use the freelancer to, say, board a ship. You could just let your guys EVA out, and obviously you could carry a lot more troops. But it seems to me that the better use for the freelancer would be running cargo, and the better use for the Cutlass would be to get boarders onto a ship where you can actually latch onto that ship and then send them up the ladder, despite the ladder looking somewhat poorly placed at the moment. But overall, that's kind of what I think is going on with these two ships. And I think that at that point, you're at a crossroads and you're making a choice. Which way do you want to go? One way is cargo. The other way is more action-oriented, more mission-oriented, sort of like go here, take out these guys, or go here, board this ship, steal this cargo, yada, yada, yada. You get what I'm saying. You're picking a course in the universe. You're picking your place. Now, it's not to say it's permanent, and it's not to say one can not fulfill the job that the other one can do, but I think to a purpose, I think they're both more suited to that singular purpose than they are to the other one. So I think in the end, really the answer to that question is up to the individual. And it has more to do with what you see yourself doing mostly in the universe. And that's the ship that's going to coincide with what your plans are. So it's really, in the end, it's up to the individual, and it's not just merely a question of this ship has, bigger guns and a bigger cargo base, so therefore it's better. It's what's better for you and what you're going to do. Everyone has a different take on it, and realistically, none of them are wrong, because it's all up, in the end, it's all up to the pilot who's going to buy it. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and thanks for watching.
Quantum travel initiated.